All right, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, I want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. I want to go back, just review a question that was asked last week. And the question was that in Genesis chapter 34, the Torah tells me that Dina went out, Dina, the daughter of Leah, verse 1, that was born to Yaakov. Leros b'benos haaretz. So question, she went out to see the women of the land, so to speak. Now the question was, why does it say that she went out, daughter of Leah? Why does it say she's also daughter of Yaakov? Right? Because it only mentions that she gave birth. She gave birth to Dina. Obviously, men aren't going to have children there. All right, can't give birth, but she's not mentioned as the daughter of Yaakov. So Rashi here says, I want to mention that last week, but I want to mention a few things. The Rashi here says that Rashi asked the question. And Rashi says she wasn't daughter of Yaakov, doesn't mention daughter of Yaakov. The fact that she went out, she wanted to see the women of the earth. Literally, she wanted to go out to see the world, so to speak. Now, Leah was very similar, had that character trait also. As the Medrash tells me, that she went out also, chapter 30, verse 16. All right, let's go back to Genesis chapter 30. Chapter 30, verse 16. It says Yaakov comes from the field, and this whole thing about the figs. Right, that Yaakov comes back from the field. At night, Leah goes out towards him, and she says, I gave, the merits that I gave Rachel for the dates, you're going to be with me tonight. But it says over there, she went out. Same language. That she went out. So, it's kind of derogatory. Right? We mentioned this also. It's derogatory. So Yaakov's name's not going to be mentioned. Right? That Rashi says explicitly. And Balaturim, the Torah, the son of the Rosh, said why, asked the question why, what happened to her over here. And it brings down from Medrash that she hit him, that she was hit, Dina was hit by Yaakov, so the eyes of Esav wouldn't be put on her. And there's no question, she could have brought him back, she could have potentially brought him to tshuva, to repentance, and Yaakov didn't want it. Yaakov wasn't interested. So he hit her in a box. And this is what happened. Right, the fact that Yaakov hit her from Esav, he doesn't want her to be with Esav. So what's the punishment? Measure for measure. She gets abused. Right, she gets abused over here by Shechem. So, simple explanation. We go like Rashi. Over here. And the fact that she wanted to go out, quote unquote, to see the world. Leah, similar. So mention the daughter of Leah, not the daughter of Yaakov. Now, Leah coming towards Yaakov, if you look over there, book of Genesis, chapter 3, verse 16. Not necessarily a bad thing. Right? Not a bad thing over here. Not like she's going out to the world. Right? Because Rachel asks for these dates. So Leah says, you took my husband. No, if you took my husband, you want dates also. So she says, fine. Yaakov's going to be by you tonight. So she goes out. So Leah goes out in order to tell the whole story. Now, it doesn't seem like over here that there's an issue. Why? Because what did she do? She went out of her tent to tell Yaakov what was going on. Right? It doesn't seem like a bad thing over here. What does Rashi say by us? What does it say at the beginning of chapter 34? Right, so Rashi says, as we mentioned, Rashi here says that she herself was similar. The Leah was similar. Now, we could ask, not exactly the same case. Leah's not going out to see the world. She's going out to call her husband. So maybe I could say it's not the same. Right? 100% it's not the same. Why not? Because two totally different things. Dina wants to go see the world. Leah's going to call her husband. Question is, maybe she should have waited. Maybe she should have stayed inside. Maybe going out to greet him is a problem. Right? So we spoke last week. We mentioned about feminism, other things. I don't think it's necessarily a feministic thing. But today, women are in the world. Most women have to work. That's the reality. So, there are ways to do it. Sometimes, probably most times, they'll have to be out of the house. Won't be able to work at home. So, if a woman's going to get a job, you got to be careful. Who works there. Other modesty issues. Someone say, well, you need a job, you take whatever you can. Okay, but, there are repercussions. There are situations, probably, situations you don't want to get into. It's obviously better, a person lived close to a Jewish community working for a Jewish company, a religious company. Right? It doesn't always work out that way. Right? People have different fields, whatever. But, there's the reality. So, with that reality doesn't mean there shouldn't be boundaries. Right? I know somebody that, will never allow a man outside of her husband to call her by her first name. Right? There are boundaries, and there should be boundaries. So you gotta say, but someone who works, let's say you have to do projects with people of the opposite sex. Fine. Not like you don't have contact, but the contact should be minimal. There's a fine line. You gotta be a team player. Can't just ignore people. So not so easy. No, but at the same time, there absolutely have to be boundaries. Because if there aren't boundaries, what happens? We know what happens. The less formal a person is, the more they let their guard down. Now, this could be in the best of marriage. Doesn't necessarily have to be in a bad marriage. I'm not saying 100% something's going to happen, but, a person's got to be careful. So Dina over here goes out, and the commentaries are not complimentary here. They're not saying it's a good thing. Now Rashi compares Dina to her mother. What does that mean? A woman has to stay in her tent. Leah has to stay in the tent the whole day. She can't go anywhere. Can't go to the marketplace. Different things. So way back when, the laws of modesty were much stricter. The world's very much changed. Very much changed. Doesn't mean there weren't things going on, under the carpet, behind closed doors. But it used to be, it used to be a whole different world. Many women didn't go out to work. They need to go out to work. They were home. Right? Homemakers. Now today, very rare to find that. People need two incomes. So, that being the case, they're out there. They're out in the world. Right? So people will say, that's the world we live in. Come on, that's the real world. Yeah, that is the world we live in. It doesn't mean it's a good thing over here. And if you ask most women, and let's say some of them have high-powered jobs, they can be CEOs, companies, this, that. If you would ask most women, they would say it takes away from their femininity. Because, let's call a spade a spade. The world's a man's world. The man's world. The woman is joining a man's world. So, in certain ways, maybe she'll be like a man, in different ways. It doesn't mean it's a good thing. It takes away from who she is. But you got to do what you got to do. Someone's not married, they don't make enough money, they have to be out there, okay? You go to stores, you go buy things, different things. Again, women have the same obligation, as men do when it comes to the verse what we say in the Shema. You're not allowed to go after your heart, you're not allowed to go after your eyes. It applies to men and women. With the internet, social media, a lot of these lines get skewed over here because you're not outside. You're not amongst everybody. Doing the privacy of your own home. So values get skewed. All kinds of things. But women have the same obligation here. We don't just discriminate against men. You'll say, well, they absolutely have to be careful what they see. True. But women are affected also. Totally affected. Someone will say, let's say a person went to visit a parent, a sibling, in, let's say, the retirement community. It's a retirement community in an area where the weather's warm. So people walking around dressed so modest. All right, so someone say, come on. A 75-year-old guy wearing, a t-shirt and shorts, someone, is really going to get turned on by that? Not saying they would. Doesn't matter. There's a decree. Still going to be careful. In such a case, let's say they were in a house together, someone they're forbidden to be alone with. Doesn't matter. It could be 70, could be 80, could be 65, irrelevant. The laws of being alone with a person of the opposite sex, when it's forbidden regardless of age. There are leniencies, different things, but still forbidden. Right? Age doesn't matter. Someone will say, come on, I'm like a dried up prune. Anyone's going to take a look at me? That's their problem. The rabbis understood. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what age. We're going to say, nope, only until this age. Or what if someone got all the plastic surgery in the world? So they're in their 60s, they look like they're 30. You're going to say, come on, that's not so common. Maybe. Maybe it's not. Does that change anything? Doesn't change anything. 100% doesn't change anything. So, guarding our eyes, guarding our thoughts, applies to both. Applies to both men and women. That being the case, evil inclination, very, very strong. There's no letting a person's guard down, ever. The only time the evil inclination doesn't have power over someone is when they're dead, when they're in the ground. That's it. Their whole life they have the evil inclination inside them. And the evil inclination trying to fool them in other things. They're going to say, come on. The body at a certain age, certain things can't do anymore. Right? It doesn't have the same vitality the body had before. And I saw many years ago, I mentioned this before. I mentioned before that this is many years ago. And I was waiting for somebody. And the women happened to pass by. Not that I was necessarily paying attention. But something did catch my attention. What caught my attention was, first of all, they look definitely older. I was much younger, no question. I mean, I could tell by the wrinkles on their face. But there were two things that jarred out. I mean, obviously they were making a statement, or at least one of them was. That was like fire red hair, orange hair. Right, obviously dyed. And a leather miniskirt. And the only thing I could think of was, you have to be kidding. I'm like, you could be my grandmother. Certainly my parent, my mother, no question. At that time. They were much older. What in the world, someone that age, like spiking their hair? I shouldn't say spiking, it was whatever, dyeing their hair and wearing a leather miniskirt. So most guys would say, come on, that's pretty gross. I mean, at that age, gotta act your age. So people will do different things to stay young. And even if somebody doesn't have that, let's say they don't do that. So an older person, what do they have? A much older person. What do they fight for? What's important to them? So many times what's important to them is honor. They want honor. That's what they have. Because society really doesn't need them. They're not really going to be working that much. Probably be retired. So they're obsolete. Put them out to pasture. Maybe do what the Greeks did. Mom, dad's been real. Take them to the top of a mountain and say sayonara. So in today's day and age, you'll say put them in a nursing home. They say, well, we can't care for them. They need round-the-clock care. Okay. I'm not going to sit there and downgrade nursing homes. They do have a purpose. No question. But at the same time, person has to act their age. Right? When does a Levite stop working in the temple? Stops working in the temple at the age of 50. It says, my Rabbi, this should be well. So he brings down his commentary in Chumash, in Tam Vadas, and he says the following. He says, why at the age of 50? He says by the age of 50, person should already start thinking about the next one. Even by the age of 40, our bodies can't do the same things it did when we were 20, when we were 30. The body starts to break down different ways. But at the age of 50, you already got to start thinking about the next one. You're not going to live forever. Right? The majority of a person's life. Because at the end of the day, what does King David say? How many years does the person get? 70. If he has strength, he gets 80. Well, if he's 50, he's 3/4 of the way there. More than 3/4. You got 20 years to go. 20 years to go. So you should be thinking about the next world. Now, how many people at the age of 50 are thinking about the next world? Probably not too many, unless they've been sick. Unless they've been, they had cancer, some other life-threatening thing, or they have other things going on in their body. So that I can understand. That they understand their time is limited. They want to, keep living or whatever, but they know because they see, their body is just breaking down. And by them, it's breaking down faster than maybe by others. Okay. But again, I'll ask the question. 50 is a milestone. 60 is a milestone. Why is 60 a milestone? 60 is a milestone because someone who's obligated to be spiritually cut off from God is usually by the age of 60. So any day after 60, that means they're not necessarily spiritually cut off. Some people make a l'chaim, whatever, celebrate a little bit. Now, that's looking at it in spiritual terms. Well, the statement someone told me a while ago that I think it's a relatively shallow way to look at life or towards the end of life. Right? And the statement was as follows. A person in their 60s, they want to go on vacation or, go places. So a person's in their 60s, no health issues, let's say, minimal health issues. So they say go. In their 70s, they want to go travel, do other things. It's called Slogo. You gotta be careful. Person hits their 80s, it's no-go. Right? So it's either go, slow-go, or no-go. So I would say by a person, by the time they're in their 80s, I would even say before this, how much longer are they going to live? They could live longer. They could live in their 90s, in theory. But, a person gets up in years, what are they going to be thinking about? They're going to be thinking about it. Well, they understand they're not going to be a fan. Because they know people that have died even shorter than that. 60s, 70s by, I mentioned last week, a friend of mine's mother passed away. And she was in her mid-70s. Wasn't that old. But there are many, many things wrong with her. But her husband died 13 years earlier. So he died at 64. That's young. We would call that young today. Someone who's older will say, well, 77 is not so old. But any day over 70 is a gift. Right? You're not going to be 100% morbid here. But what am I living for? What am I in this world for? I'm in this world, God, the Mesilas Yesharim says in Path of the Just, what am I doing in this world? I'm merely Zaneg Hashem. Zaneg Hashem means God wants to give of his goodness. That's what he wants. He wants us to enjoy this world. How are we going to do that? Because he gave us Torah. He gave us mitzvahs. Right? He gave us the ability to draw close. Didn't say it's going to be easy. But that's what we're supposed to do in spiritual terms. But the Ramchal in Derech Hashem says, you know what? We live in a world of distraction. Tremendous world of distraction. So he says, in order to reach the minimal level that forces the world to come to a certain level you have to reach. And guess what? No one knows what that is. What's the minimal level? If you don't reach that minimal level, you don't get it. But see, even when a person gets older, right? That's always by secular people. Yeah, some would say, well, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here. You never know, blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't mean they took stock of life. Because they'll do what the prophet Isaiah said. I think it's Isaiah. Who said, people will say, eat, drink, and marry, lest tomorrow I die. So let me enjoy life. I only go around once, maybe. Right? Only go around once, so you got to enjoy everything before you die. And what the person going to put on the gravestone? All the places they saw in the world. Can't take it with you. The only thing we take with us are our good deeds. That's it. We don't take anything else. Think about the Chinese or Japanese. When someone dies, they put in like cars, toy cars, credit cards. They can use it in the next world. Like it's going to come in handy. But see, people don't believe they're going to live forever. Right? That's for sure not. You ask anybody, you live forever, they'll say no. Everybody knows. It's one thing guaranteed in life besides taxes. That's guaranteed. But how many people think, about what life's all about? Maybe when it's too late, they're on their deathbed and then they realize, wow, what a waste of life I had. Wasted this, wasted that, wasted the other thing. Maybe. But a lot of people, okay, I was in this world for however long and that's it. That was my time to go. How do they know it's their time to go? Because the soul knows. It's a feeling. Can't be explained, but the soul knows. When the time is coming. Person in their 20s, they're not thinking this. Maybe they'll get shaken up. Someone young dies, or, God forbid, terrorist attack. Someone gets killed in a car accident suddenly. Many things can happen. No guarantee today, no guarantee tomorrow. But are they thinking tomorrow they're not going to wake up? Are they thinking they're going to get hit by a bus or anything else, God forbid? Not thinking that. What will people say? Come on, someone in their 20s? They'll say you get your whole life in front of you. You got everything to live for. Right? That's why, God forbids, if someone's in dire straits, they commit suicide. Said, what a waste of life here. Especially being so young. So you say, they had other issues, mental issues or who knows what. Life isn't easy. Taking your own life is, it's pretty drastic. But at the same time, we have to realize we're not here forever. And at a certain age, I would think, and this is a bad assumption, because you know what happens when you assume things. We're not going to go there, but when a person makes an assumption, what would my assumption be? My assumption be, I would think that at some point in a person's life, they're going to take stock of what life's all about. At a certain point, they're not going to be in their 20s. Not going to be in their 30s. Going to be much later. Now, it could be earlier because maybe they got scared of something. Family member died tragically or suffered or who knows what. There are certain things that may wake us up. But guess what? Not enough. Why do I say not enough? Because my Rebbe says, why do people die young and old? So you say, well, God takes them whenever he wants to take them. That's true. But he says the reason is so people repent. The reason is because they'll see that they have no idea what's going to be tomorrow. And God gives them the opportunity to repent. You see people live longer lives, people live shorter lives, and nobody's in control. God says, I want you to draw close to me. I don't care how many distractions there are in the world. I want you to work hard. I want to give you of me. You have a portion of the world to come. But that means you gotta take life seriously. Kids from a relatively young age, they know. They come to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah and they're taught about Rosh Hashanah. They know it's about life and death. They got to explain to them on their terms. But they know in the religious world. Because that's how they've been brought up. They may not necessarily think about it so much, but the reality is they see people around them that are not here anymore. Grandparents, aunts, whatever. And people die many different ways. Many different ways. So as my Rebbe says, people die young, die old to wake us up. Because even a person dies old. And I heard a great rabbi once say, talking to someone and their father died. They were very close. This person said, I just didn't think he was going to die. What, you didn't know that eventually everyone's going to die? So this rabbi asked us, wow, how old was he? He's like 97. So, but I didn't think he was going to die. Well, he wasn't going to live forever, but it was still a shock. It was still a shock. Right? And that's the proof that we all have a soul. And that we all know. We all know there's right and wrong. Why? Because when we see something and when we hear something, if we're just robots, nothing affects us. Nothing will affect us. Robots, they're not affected by anything. Yell at them, they scream at them. Forget about artificial intelligence. They're not affected. They're not affected. something like this, even by someone who's much older, even if they would live to 100 and then they finally die, at whatever age, it's still a shock to the system. That means at least the person's alive. That's what it means. Because if they were never shocked, then it means they're basically dead. Because death never should have been. It's not a Jewish concept. Adam and Eve ate from the tree. Okay, God went to plan B. But it was plan B, wasn't plan A. Didn't God know plan A wasn't going to work? Okay, but he still did it. He let man go through the, the motions over here, but he knew. He knew what it was going to be. 100% he knew. Okay, now we had to change things. He had to go to plan B. So everybody knows this. This is something, you say, well, why are you speaking about it so much? Everybody knows it's obvious. You're right, it's clear. So you're going to say, if I think about it too much, I'll be depressed. Okay. But, anytime anyone has a birthday, any birthday that a person has, don't you realize it's one further step closer to the grave? You're going to say, what, I can't even celebrate a birthday? Didn't necessarily say that. Made a video about birthdays and other things. On Tanakh Talk, spoke about that. But birthdays themselves, that's what it means. It's a foot closer in the grave. Is anyone thinking that in their 20s? No. In the 30s? No. Most likely. You get older, you start thinking of it a little bit more. When you get much older, and then people you grew up with, everyone starts dying around you. Someone told me a while ago, they had 10 very close friends. Person in their mid-80s, they have 4 left. If you don't have Torah, it's very, very depressing. Because they know their days are numbered. So you're going to say, Rabbi, come on. Your days are numbered also. All our days are numbered. Right. All our days are numbered. But what are we doing with those days? We take stock. We should take stock every night, of what we've done during the day. What we wanted to accomplish, did we accomplish? But see, you look at when Sarah died. Sarah died, it says she was 100 like 20 like 7. So why didn't you say 127? Because all her days were equal. I don't know. What does that mean all her days are equal? When she's 7, it was equal when she was 20. And when she was 40. When she's 5. So all the days were equal in Avodas Hashem. And in serving God. Right? Always striving to be better. So you can say we have good days, we have bad days, stronger days, weaker days. Days we're into it more and not. You're right. But you know what? It's a gift. It's an absolute gift. Next week, Sunday, we're going to commemorate, we're going to light the first Hanukkah lights. And, we'll make the blessing, God and the miracles for our forefathers. The Thanksgiving blessing we're going to make. And then say these candles are holy, blah, blah, blah. But what are we reliving? What are we commemorating? They say it's obvious. Crucible of oil that was left. And each one, and it should have lasted 8 days. It only lasted 1. So each day is its own miracle. You're right. We fought against the Greeks. Drove the Greeks out. You see, Greeks were different than Haman. Haman wanted to destroy, kill every single Jew. No different than Hitler. Yamach Shemoy V'zichron. May his name be blotted out. And many say the Germans were an offshoot of Amalek during the war. Nonetheless, it was clear what he wanted. What do the Greeks want? You'll say the Greeks also made decrees. Terrible decrees. True. Very, very true. One major difference. The Greeks were not into annihilating the Jews. They didn't want to kill them like Haman did. They wanted them to be just like them. Go to the gymnasiums, go to the coliseums, marry their women, be exactly like them. And guess what? We're living in a Greek world today. Education, the roads, other things, worship of the body, sports, entertainment. This is a Greek world. And everyone would call the Greeks, they enlightened the people's minds. They would call that life, beauty, art, renaissance. What do the rabbis call it? Rabbis call it nothing short of darkness. Why darkness? Because all these things are futile. All these things don't mean nothing. Because that's what life's all about. Fantasy. Moshe Mendelssohn himself said, you want to be a Jew in your house. Be like everybody else when you go outside. And that is the number one recipe for disaster for the Jewish people. And that's why we have a silent Holocaust. Not physical, spiritual. You got people I just heard earlier, we're going to have this family Hanukkah party, okay? At the same time, they're going to celebrate December 25th. Get the best of both worlds. I don't know, is there anything more foolish than that? I guess, Charlton Heston, he played Moshe Rabbeinu, in the movie Ten Commandments. But he also played John the Baptist. I want to cover both his angles here. Plays Moshe Rabbeinu, John the Baptist. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, that's what we do, it's our custom, whatever. Right, but if most of the people there, lighting the candles, probably not going to be done on the right day anyway, but let's say, even if it's done on Hanukkah, and 90% or let's say 60% there aren't Jewish, isn't that defeating the purpose? Isn't that exactly what the Greeks wanted? Exactly what the Greeks wanted. So why aren't people, back to what we said before, why aren't people taking stock of their lives? Because they just want to do what they want to do. They want to enjoy life and they'll take fantasy. Someone once told me, says, you get this cantor and he sings and opera and whatever, the high holy days, we're there to be entertained. Right? We're paying money to be entertained. What was it, Hollywood? I go to synagogue to be entertained. Isn't synagogue called a house of worship? It's called a house of worship. Right? Someone told me the more money you pay, you're going to buy tickets for the high holy days. So the more money you pay, you get closer to the air conditioning. So I said, I got a great idea. Just bow down to an air conditioner. They're like, that's very cynical. I said, you told me. The more money you pay, the closer you get to the AC. That's absurd. It's totally absurd. Are they thinking about life and death? No. They care if the Torah is true? No. But see, at the end of the day, how do I know there's a God and he runs the world? Because at the end of the day, the biggest atheists in the world, if they're in a tremendous amount of pain, they've got a big operation, they're going to tell somebody to pray for them. They're going to tell a religious person to pray for them. But they don't believe in it, right? That's what I want to ask somebody when I get the question, right? I want to see their reaction. They say, going in for, major operation or an operation, you should pray for me. Why? Why would you want me to pray for you? You don't really believe in it anyway. That'll be the end of the conversation. They'll say, just pray for me anyway. We may not believe the same things, but what, you think I don't believe in God? Maybe I don't believe in your God. You're right. You don't believe in my God. And if you don't believe in my God, so what are my prayers going to help here? Right? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Right? But if someone's going to, if they're agnostic to say, okay, I have a doubt of God's existence. But if someone's a major atheist, and they would ask someone to pray for them. They're dying. They want someone to pray for them. Why? You don't even believe in it. Amalek, an offshoot of Amalek, if we knew who Amalek was today, they don't believe in the supernatural. 100% they don't believe in the supernatural. If someone who doesn't believe in the supernatural is going to ask me to pray for them, I don't think so. Well, there's no atheist in a foxhole. I do understand what someone's going to say, but they're taking stock of life most likely when it's too late, if they ever do. But everybody knows the person's going to die. They say it doesn't matter. I'm going to live life to the fullest. I'm going to do whatever I do. I'm going to enjoy life. This makes me happy. It's hard to enjoy life in this world. Very hard. There are a lot of things that just bring us down. Some that we do ourselves, other things other people do to us. For whatever reason, we're brought down. God says, but I still want you to stick to me like glue. Because I want you to understand I'm the only one here. But don't you realize, at the end of the day, you're going to come back. You're going to die. You're going to come back to me. And then we're going to see what you did. So that's why, by the age of 50, my Rebbe said, you got to take stock. You got to take stock of your life. Like by the Levim, that's when they stop working. The body changes. But there are people that, unfortunately, will do whatever it takes to keep the body strong. To keep it fit or, to do things that really shouldn't be able to do. There was a story. I know there are a bunch of questions here, but I'm on a roll here. There's a story that of Lyle Alzado. Anyone know who Lyle Alzado is? Lyle Alzado was a former football player. Guy was big as an ox. Like 6'5", 300 pounds. Give or take. Guy was on heavy steroids. Right? Built himself up like a balloon. And he stopped playing football, but he still wanted to be that big. So he continued, steroids, other things. And one day, came out of a pharmacy, and he fainted. He fainted on the pavement. Now, he fell so hard, he broke his nose. I think that's how the story goes. He broke his nose. And in the end, what happened? He had an inoperable, I think he had brain cancer, but an inoperable tumor. He's just like a time bomb ticking. He eventually died. But the irony was that even when he wasn't playing football, he still juiced up because he wanted to have that physique. He wanted, it was all fantasy. He wasn't even playing the game. There's no edge over here. He just wanted to be that big. I don't know, ego, whatever it was. Right? Destroyed him. Totally destroyed him. So people will take fantasy. They 100% will take fantasy. Because they don't think about what life's about. Because that's too depressing. But what am I living for? Right? That's the question we all have to ask. And we know the answer. I'm living to do whatever God tells me to do. That's what I'm living for. Sometimes I do it better, sometimes I do it worse. But he's giving us an unbelievable opportunity. And the opportunity is keep his Torah mitzvahs, whether I convert or not. That's worth millions. Millions. Because you want to live to a higher standard. You want to be a better person. You want to help others. right? We can't lose sight of that. And we can't just say, well, when tragedy happens or somebody dies, now I take stock. You know what? You should be taking stock anyway. You don't know what's going to be tomorrow. Nobody knows. And even if someone lives to a ripe old age, they live till 97. It doesn't matter. Right? It's still a shock to a certain extent. Some people say, well, if they were suffering, well, I'm glad he's dead. That's what people will say. He doesn't have to suffer anymore. You hope. You hope he's not going to suffer later. Or she's not going to suffer later. We have to take stock. We have to wake up. And that's why God throws us wake-up calls all the time. Yeah, someone here asked, what do other people who make it to 100? Yeah, there are people who make it to 100. Now, God could keep people alive for a much longer time for one very simple reason, because he's just going to destroy them later. Even if they don't keep Torah mitzvahs, God will repay them in this world. In other words, if they did one mitzvah in the world, or 5 mitzvahs in the world, and God's going to spit them out in the next world, and they'll get spiritually cut off, that means God has to repay them for the good things they've done, for mitzvahs they've done, because that would only be fair, right? If he's going to punish them, things they did wrong, okay, but he also has to reward them. So they're not going to get rewarded in the next world, so God will give it to them now. They could live longer, they could have a lot of money, they could have all kinds of things, but they're not going to have spiritual life. So someone asked, by the time you're 60, you can be spiritually cut off? Yeah. Person can die before 60. I'm not saying that's the reason, but if a person dies before 60, that's what it could mean. They have to get spiritually cut off. But, they could die later and also be spiritually cut off. Just God keeps them around for longer for whatever reason. So being spiritually cut off, someone asked, how would you know if they're cut off? You don't. Well, Rabbi says there's a test, there's a litmus test. What's the litmus test? Something like what happened to Pharaoh. What happened to Pharaoh? God hardened his heart. So why does Pharaoh get punished? Why does God knock him around and punish him? In other words, if God takes away our free will, can't punish us, not fair. That wouldn't be fair. So the Rambam and others say that what happened to Pharaoh? Pharaoh, the first couple of commandments, God gave him an opportunity. God says, I want you to repent. So God wants him to repent, and he's defiant. So after the first couple of plagues, what does God do? God says, okay, I'm taking away your free will, and I'm going to zap you and all your people, and I'm going to show the world. Took away his free will, but he gave it an opportunity. Now, how do I know? The question is, how do I know if someone's been spiritually cut off? Just take someone like Pharaoh. Pharaoh, if you look around what happened to him throughout the plagues, his whole country's getting decimated. Decimated. In the end, when the Jews go out, they take all the money, vegetation, animals, plants, all these things, decimated, the whole country, decimated. Doesn't make any sense. It keeps going. Same time when there was one frog, the plague of the frogs. So what happened? So they just started whacking it. And the frog kept multiplying and multiplying by infinity. And they kept whacking it. Cognitive dissonance. They think the more they whack it, the more they're going to kill. But the reality is the more they whacked it, they multiplied by exponential numbers. So you're going to say, but that's not normal. You're right. And Pharaoh letting his country get destroyed, it's also not normal. God played with him. Totally took away his free will. So by us, what could happen? What could happen is we get so entrenched in our evil inclination. There's no, it could be, God forbid, there's no way out. Meaning, Person just says, okay, this is the way I am, this is the way I will be, and that's it. They have no willpower, none. So whatever happens, happens. Or they'll say, you'll just get a bigger portion of the world to come. I'll get a smaller portion. Well, who says you're going to get there? The Mishnah Perkei Avos says, it says in ethics for our fathers, every Jew has a portion of the world to come. But the Talmud says there are people who can lose it. There's no guarantee. We'd hope people keeping Torah mitzvahs and working hard, God's going to understand. They should have a portion of the world to come. Right? But if someone is so entrenched, in evil, in impurity, and doing terrible things, then, if someone will say, I have no willpower, and if someone puts food in front of me, I'll eat it. That means they have no willpower. You'll say, well, maybe they won't eat it. All right, but 9 times out of 10, this person will eat it. So what would that seem to be? It means that their free will is taken away. They know it's not good for them. They know, okay, so they'll walk, they'll exercise, this, that. But you put another piece of cake in front of them, they'll eat it. We're not talking about where they're a brittle diabetic and it'll kill them. But they know it's not good for them. Take someone who's a smoker. So you tell me smoking's different because, there's nicotine, it's addictive. You're right. Right, but at a certain point, however much a person smokes, very hard to give up. And as a doctor told my Rebbe how bad it is to smoke, and he himself was smoking, he said, I'd rather give up years of my life than give up this enjoyment. That means he also has no free will. Imagine all the statistics, all the terrible things that smoking does to your body. Right? All the bad things. So now you're going to tell me you're still going to smoke? Even with the addiction, I understand. Even with the addiction. But some people just won't give it up. Why won't they give it up? For this reason. Their willpower taken away from them. They don't have free will in this case. So there are people like that. Right now, if we're entrenched in doing bad things, and we've been doing it for so long, now, I'm not going to say it's 100% impossible to overcome. But if someone's entrenched, it could mean that they are spiritually cut off. Because God's not giving you the opportunity to change. He wants you to keep going in this direction. He's pointing you in that direction to go to oblivion. So my Rebbe says you got to be careful. Because if we do things by rote, and we continue to do things that are wrong, who's to say that it's not about, I'm fighting it, I lost this battle, I'm going to fight again. People give up. This is the problem. People give up. And when they give up, what happens? They have no will to fight. Having no will to fight could possibly mean that their soul is spiritually cut off. Now, it doesn't mean you can't work hard to fight against that. But I'm saying there are some people who just give up. And when they give up, they say, I just don't care anymore. I've been beaten down too much, this, that, and I don't care anymore. So they give up. So someone asks the $1 million question, which is better, live a long life or die young? $1 million question. So what would be a good rabbinic answer? It depends. If a person's going to utilize the days that they should, and they're granted long life, then the merit they get in the next world exponential. But if they're going to live a long life doing the wrong thing, then that's going to destroy them even more. Now, if a person would have a choice, God would come to them and say, listen, I can take you now, I can take you now, and you're going to be at a very high spiritual level, in the next world and blah, blah, blah. You're ready to go right now. Now, let's say a person's married, they have kids, they have grandkids, or whatever. And they're guaranteed right now, God comes to them and says, I'm going to give you X portion. You can have an unbelievably high portion of the world to come. And let's say it's God, it's not a fake and all that. Now, some people may say, I don't care what's going to be left behind. I'll take it. I want that high level. And, I want to go right now. Other people may say, but how could I leave? How could I leave this world? If I got longer years, if I'm going to be here longer, then let me enjoy. Let me enjoy. If a person has a spouse, their kids, their grandkids, this, that, let them enjoy. Right? It's a catch-22. If a person reached their potential and they did it in a short amount of time, okay. There are people that have died young but did unbelievable things in their life that would take some people a couple lifetimes to do. So the answer depends. Some people live long lives, and in the end, they can't function, or they can't do very much. Even great rabbinic scholars. The question is, why does God keep them around? Because their reward is so great, it protects the generation. Even if they can't really do much at the end of their life. Yeah, great rabbis lived to over 100. Many of them, their mind was clear to the very end. Some more, some less. You can have other people die relatively young. Story of Mordechai Pogramansky. Right? An unbelievable rabbinic scholar, one of the Torah giants of the last generation. Survived the war miraculously many times. And he died shortly thereafter in his 40s. I don't think he ever merited to have children. So you think somebody like that, you're going to say, he survived the war, went through hell during the war. You're not going to let him rebuild. Be this unbelievable Torah scholar, Torah giant, that generation. We don't have answers. I don't have an answer. But he reached his potential at the age of, in his mid-40s. He also suffered unbelievable. Suffered cancer. But he reached already unbelievable levels that, he didn't have to live any longer. So it depends what a person does with their life. A person can accomplish a lot in a short amount of time. A person can take a lot longer. Person, if the community needs them, even if they're liable for a death penalty, God will keep them alive because the community needs them. So it depends. Right? It depends. That's what I would answer. So someone asks, the soul knows when it's time to go. Yes. Because when a person, is at the end of their life, they could say, well, I'm suffering like this and like that. They may give up the will to live. I'm not saying they're committing suicide. They give up the will to live. Or they just know. They just know the body's getting weaker, weaker, weaker. And they know it's only a matter of time. But the soul definitely knows. Because when a person says, I know my time is, if they have the ability to do this, right? They'll say that they know, time's running out. They may think it could be a miracle here, a miracle there, but deep down, they know. The soul knows. Sounds like a bad movie. The soul knows. Soul feels it. Soul feels they're being drawn to the next one. And many times they'll see family members that have been dead for years, waiting to greet them, bring them into the next world. A friend of mine, his father, right before he passed away, was sort of in and out of consciousness. And all of a sudden, he sat up and and he mentioned his brother-in-law's name that passed away years before. Like you could see him right in front of his face. So he knew. He's sort of like hanging between this world and the next, but that was clear indication. Rabbi of mine told me once his mother was dying, and and all of a sudden she saw, and she started screaming. Her parents were there, other people in her family, and she wasn't, she didn't want to die. She wasn't ready to go. And screaming like, "Get out of here! I'm not," whatever. And they were bringing her into the next world. The transition. Number of stories like this. So the soul knows. And the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, right? It says in ethics of our fathers, person is born against the will, they die against the will. Because in general, no one wants to die. They want to stay here. Oh, they're suffering, going through other things. Maybe they want to end it earlier. Whatever the case is. But they want to stay in this world. For as long as possible until, they just can't take it anymore. And they said, okay, they understand. They understand. They tell me someone with dementia, someone with Alzheimer's, okay, they're not going to be aware. Their mind's not there. But I'm saying for other people, they know it's something that the soul recognizes. Can't put it, I don't know, I guess I can't put it into better words than that, but it's something the soul knows. Someone there says, if you found you define the real truth late, still want more time to learn. True. Doesn't matter when a person comes to truth. Totally doesn't matter. Right? You got to make up for lost time, and you learn as much as you can. Yeah. Any other questions? I want to know about a Litvak synagogue in Brooklyn. Okay, I'll get back to you on that one. Don't know any offhand, but can find out. Any other questions? People can have visions, of dead relatives. I mean, if the person's totally healthy, the mind is there, doesn't necessarily mean they're transitioning. That's normally the case, but doesn't necessarily have to be. There are other people that, can come to them, let's say in a dream, or maybe it can be there, as well. I don't know. Some people may have a sixth sense. I've had someone tell me that they can see certain things that most people can't. I'll take them at face value. Not saying that they should be an insane asylum. There are people like that, or somewhat like that. A person can come to someone in a dream also. It doesn't mean they're going to die tomorrow, in order to give them a message or something else. Could it be someone's hallucinating and it happens? Could be. Not going to say no. It's not normally the case, right? Not normally the case. Normal case is when they're transitioning out, but it can happen, right? I've heard of cases like that, but I'm not going to say it's the norm. I don't think it's the norm, by any stretch. I mean, not that I took a study, and I'm an expert, so you can take what I say with a grain of salt. But I don't think it's, I would say I don't think it's that common. Any other questions? All right, no one has any questions. I'm going to sign out. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, or at Michael Chaim Coffman. You want to send me an email, Rabbi Chaim Coffman at gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN at gmail.com. Wish everyone a good beginning.